Most people assume mental sharpness is something you're born with. You either have a quick mind, or you don't. But modern neuroscience tells a different story. Your brain isn't a fixed machine. It's more like a living network that continuously rewires itself. Every unfamiliar challenge, every new skill, every moment you struggle through something difficult sends a message to your brain: adapt. And adaptation is where growth begins. Here's the surprising part. Many people spend hours looking for miracle supplements, productivity hacks, or complicated routines, while overlooking something far more powerful: small, deliberate challenges that force the brain to think in new ways. Not because they're difficult. Because they're different. Today, instead of talking about brain training, you're going to experience it. Some of these exercises may feel surprisingly easy at first. Others might expose weaknesses you never realized you had. That's exactly the point. Real improvement starts where your brain can no longer rely on autopilot. So don't just watch. Participate. Treat each activity like a personal experiment. There's no score to beat except the one you set for yourself tomorrow. Let's begin with something that appears simple but quietly tests one of the most important abilities your brain uses every single day: finding order inside chaos. Imagine looking at a page filled with scattered numbers. Your eyes naturally want to wander, but your brain has a different job. It must ignore distractions, stay focused on one target, and rapidly shift attention without losing track of the sequence. When you search for numbers in order under a time limit, you're exercising far more than eyesight. Your attention system, visual processing speed, and working memory all have to cooperate in real time. If you have a number grid ready, give yourself 30 seconds. Start at 1 and move upward without skipping ahead. Resist the temptation to scan randomly. Stay calm, stay systematic, and notice how your concentration changes as the clock keeps ticking. Finished? Whether you completed the challenge or not, pay attention to something more important than your final score: how your mind behaved. Did you rush and miss obvious numbers? Did your eyes jump around the page? Or did you develop a steady rhythm as you progressed? Those observations reveal just as much as the result itself. The encouraging news is that your brain quickly adapts to this type of exercise. With consistent practice, many people notice faster visual recognition, improved concentration, and an easier time filtering out distractions in everyday situations, from reading dense material to locating information on a crowded screen. Now let's shift gears. The next challenge isn't about where your eyes look. It's about whether your brain can resist one of its strongest automatic habits. Your mind loves shortcuts. When it recognizes a familiar word, it reads it almost instantly without asking for permission. Most of the time, that's incredibly useful. For the next exercise, however, that automatic response becomes your biggest obstacle. Instead of reading what the word says, your task will be to identify only the color of the letters. It sounds almost trivial, until your brain tries to do both jobs at the same time. That's where the real workout begins. Your brain is remarkably efficient. It spends years building mental shortcuts so you can recognize faces, read words, and make decisions without consciously analyzing every detail. Efficiency saves energy. But sometimes, efficiency also becomes a limitation. When the meaning of a word conflicts with the color it's printed in, two different systems inside your brain compete for control. One wants to read automatically. The other must slow everything down and focus on the visual information instead. That tiny moment of conflict is where valuable training happens. As you call out the colors instead of the words, notice what happens. Do you hesitate? Accidentally read the text? Feel your attention drifting? Those aren't mistakes. They're signs that your brain is working through interference. With repeated practice, exercises like this can strengthen selective attention, improve cognitive flexibility, and make it easier to stay focused when distractions compete for your mental resources. Now let's remove something your brain depends on more than you realize. Your eyesight. Close your eyes for a moment. Not just to relax, but to work. Without looking, try writing your name on a sheet of paper. Sketch a simple shape. Unlock your phone and type a short sentence if you feel confident enough. At first, even familiar movements may suddenly feel uncertain. That's because your brain has temporarily lost one of its primary sources of information. Instead, it must rely on touch, muscle memory, and your internal sense of where your body is in space, a system known as proprioception. It's a reminder that your brain is constantly combining information from multiple senses to help you perform even the simplest actions. When one source disappears, the others have to step up. This kind of sensory challenge encourages your brain to become more adaptable rather than dependent on a single stream of information. Here's something interesting to think about. Many people assume intelligence is measured by how much you know. But in reality, one of the strongest signs of cognitive fitness is how well you adapt when familiar conditions suddenly change. Let's put that adaptability to another test. Raise both hands. With one hand, make a simple gesture. With the other, create a completely different one. Now switch them. Then switch again. Sounds easy, until both hands refuse to cooperate. This exercise isn't really about your fingers. It's about communication between different regions of your brain. Each side of your body is largely controlled by the opposite hemisphere. When both hands perform different actions simultaneously, your brain has to coordinate separate movement patterns while keeping them synchronized. That level of coordination challenges timing, attention, and motor planning all at once. Don't worry if it feels awkward. Awkwardness is often a sign that you're asking your nervous system to build a skill it hasn't fully developed yet. Every successful switch strengthens that connection a little more. Now let's make an even smaller change, one that can quietly reshape your brain over time. Tomorrow morning, when you brush your teeth, reach for the toothbrush with the hand you rarely use. It will probably feel slow. Messy. Unnatural. Perfect. Your dominant hand performs countless actions every day with almost no conscious effort. It's running on well-established neural pathways. Your non-dominant hand, however, forces your brain to slow down, pay attention, and recruit circuits that normally stay in the background. The task itself hasn't changed. But the way your brain solves it has. Try writing a grocery list. Opening a door. Using a computer mouse. Pouring a glass of water. Even eating a meal. Simple routines become surprisingly engaging when your brain can't rely on habit alone. These small moments of deliberate discomfort encourage flexibility, coordination, and greater awareness of movements that usually happen automatically. There's a broader lesson hidden here. Growth rarely comes from repeating what's already easy. It comes from introducing manageable amounts of novelty. Your brain thrives on novelty. Not chaos. Not overload. Just enough challenge to keep adapting. And that principle extends far beyond physical movement. Think about the activities you choose for entertainment. Some forms of entertainment ask almost nothing from your mind. Others demand planning, memory, pattern recognition, and strategic thinking. The difference matters. A game that requires anticipation, problem-solving, and careful decision-making exercises many of the same cognitive systems you rely on in everyday life. Whether it's solving number puzzles, playing strategy games, tackling logic problems, or searching for hidden patterns, the key isn't the specific activity. It's the mental effort required. The best brain exercises don't simply keep you busy. They keep you thinking. Every time you're forced to evaluate options, remember previous information, or adjust your strategy after making a mistake, your brain is practicing skills that transfer into real-world situations. That's why the goal isn't endless stimulation. It's meaningful challenge. Because an entertained brain isn't necessarily a growing brain. A challenged one often is. There's one final exercise, and unlike the others, it doesn't require a puzzle, a timer, or even a free hand. It begins with a simple question. How often do you let technology think for you? Modern devices are extraordinary tools. Within seconds, they can calculate complex equations, guide us through unfamiliar cities, store thousands of contacts, remind us about appointments, and answer questions that once required hours of research. The convenience is undeniable. But convenience comes with a subtle trade-off. Every time you immediately reach for a calculator instead of estimating the answer, your brain loses an opportunity to practice numerical reasoning. Every time you rely on GPS for a route you've driven dozens of times, your internal map becomes a little less active. Every time you save information without attempting to remember it, you're telling your brain that remembering isn't necessary. Your brain is remarkably efficient. If a skill isn't being used, it begins to allocate fewer resources to it. Not because it's failing, but because it's adapting to your habits. That's why memory isn't just something you have. It's something you maintain. Think back to childhood. Many people could instantly recall the phone numbers of close friends or family members. Important dates seemed permanently stored. Directions were learned by paying attention to landmarks instead of following a digital voice. Today, much of that responsibility has quietly shifted to our devices. Technology hasn't made us less intelligent. But it has changed what we choose to remember. The solution isn't to reject modern technology. That would be unrealistic and unnecessary. Instead, use it intentionally. Before opening a calculator, estimate the answer in your head. Before checking your notes, try recalling the information first. Before relying on navigation, picture the route yourself. Challenge yourself to remember a shopping list before writing it down. Learn one important phone number by heart. Recall the names of everyone you met today before scrolling through your messages. These tiny acts may seem insignificant on their own, but together they tell your brain something powerful. This information matters. Keep these pathways active. Over weeks and months, those repeated signals shape the way your mind responds to everyday life. And that's the hidden lesson connecting every exercise you've experienced today. None of them are magical. None of them promise overnight transformation. What they do offer is something much more valuable: consistent opportunities for your brain to adapt. Neuroscientists often describe the brain as an organ of efficiency. It strengthens the networks you use repeatedly and gradually weakens those you neglect. In other words, your daily habits become your brain's instruction manual. If every day looks exactly the same, your brain becomes exceptionally good at repeating the same patterns. But introduce small, meaningful challenges, searching more carefully, focusing more deeply, coordinating unfamiliar movements, recalling information from memory, solving problems without shortcuts, and your brain receives a different message. Keep growing. That's why cognitive fitness isn't reserved for students preparing for exams or professionals working in demanding careers. It's relevant to everyone. Whether you're learning a language, raising a family, building a business, creating art, or simply hoping to stay mentally sharp as the years pass, your brain responds to one timeless principle. Use it with intention, and it will continue adapting. The remarkable part is that meaningful progress rarely comes from dramatic changes. It comes from small decisions repeated consistently. Choosing curiosity over routine. Effort over autopilot. Learning over comfort. One exercise won't redefine your mind. One day won't either. But hundreds of small moments, stacked together over time, can reshape the way you think, focus, remember, and solve problems. So the next time you catch yourself moving through the day on automatic pilot, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is there a slightly more challenging way to do this? That single question may become one of the most valuable brain training habits you'll ever develop. Your mind is constantly adapting. The only real question is, What are you training it to become? If you enjoyed exploring the science behind these practical exercises, consider putting at least one of them into practice today. Don't aim for perfection, aim for consistency. As you discover which challenges make the biggest difference for you, share your experience with others. Your insight might inspire someone else to start strengthening their own mind. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and above all, never stop giving your brain a reason to grow.